Season 3, Ep 1, Scene 1. Yo mate, what up? Welcome back to another lawn tip vid. I'm just kidding, please don't sue me, Ben. Welcome back everybody, this is Season 3 of Backyard Blitz, budget style. I'm kind of like that weird little cousin of lawn tips that nobody likes or really watches. Quick recap of where we've been. We've renovated the full backyard, returfed, done a bunch of stuff. You can go back and watch the videos if you like. When we left off, it was the end of autumn, and we're getting into winter. It's now spring, so we've skipped through all of winter. Let's catch up on a few things that we've done. For some reason, I had in my head that I'd been really productive over the last couple of months, and I had a lot to show you, but turns out I haven't actually done much at all. The grass looks good though. So one thing we have actually been spending quite a bit of time on is getting the garden looking really good. And here it is up here. Look at it. It's healthy, thriving. Love it. This all still looks the same. Well, this still looks the same. And still haven't used the whippersnipper yet. Alright, let's get started on a new project. I'm super excited to get into a bit of epoxy resin pouring and mucking around with that a little bit. I've dabbled in it a little bit. I've done a workshop where I made this art piece. It's surfboard bit of timber and different coloured epoxy resins put over the top. It's meant to look like a beach. Kind of looks like I've spilled a tub of yogurt on a bit of timber. Yeah, so this is an example of some of the artwork that you can do with epoxy. Some of the other things you can do, which are really popular, the flavour of the month, it's a bit of hipster woodworking at the moment, is epoxy resin, river tables and that sort of thing. I'll try and put a photo on the screen so you can get an example. So we're taking different coloured epoxy resins that are liquid, pouring it in between some timber. As it dries and hardens, it becomes a pretty cool piece of timber and resin. I've gone and picked myself up some supplies. As always, we're doing it on the cheap. We're doing it budget style. You can invest a lot of money in a lot of epoxy stuff, lots of expensive molds, or you can do it on the cheap like I have. Let me show you what I've got and we'll get started. So to start with, we've got the epoxy itself. Now this is a 2-part epoxy resin. It's supposedly crystal clear and it has a low viscosity, so it means it's going to be quite runny to start with as it starts to harden, so we've got a lot of work time with it. Got a couple of mixing cups. We want to get our measurements right, some puddle pop sticks to mix it up with. And then we've got our color, our pigment. So I've got a duo green yellow. This is a powdered pigment. And then I've also got this Bayard blue, which is a liquid. We've got some essential tools here. The kitchen scale, so we can get our measurements right with the epoxy. Pulled these from the kitchen. Don't tell upper management, that was free. We've also got this palette knife, which I think is meant for like frosting cakes, which will do the job perfectly for mushing some of that epoxy resin around. We need a bit of fire. I didn't have a flamethrower on hand, so I went and picked up this little guy. Next, we've got the mold. So one thing that epoxy doesn't stick to is silicone. So we picked up again, these are meant for baking, a couple of trays. Should make it super easy to pop these out as well. As I was saying before, you can purchase some really expensive specific epoxy resin molds. This should do the job just as well. A little bit of safety equipment. I'm going to wear some gloves, keep my hands clean. And Google says I don't need to wear a respirator. It says the chemical reaction and the fumes that release from the epoxy aren't toxic. However, I've become quite fond of my lungs, so I'm going to wear that anyway, just as a precaution. And lastly, we need the product of what we're actually setting in the resin, what we're pouring on top of. So these here are a couple of branches that I've cut from one of the bonsai that we'll meet in another video. And there was a third one that I've actually cut down on the table saw and got some of these nice little bits out of. So the idea will be, I don't know if I've said this already, we're going to make some coasters. So a couple of little resin coasters like this. If you can imagine, that square edge will be the outside and then the middle will be full of the resin. That's the plan, that's the goal. And I've cut these down so they should fit perfectly in here. like this. I'll fix up the arrangement and make it look pretty. Anyway, so that's going to be the plan. We'll pour our thin layer of epoxy in there, let it sit and harden, and then we'll go from there. I didn't explain these. So a couple of bits of timber. We'll coat these in some sticky tape because epoxy also doesn't stick to that. And then I can use these on top here, like so, to clamp the timber down because it may float, and then I'll put clamps on the top of this. Okay, well I just finished that pour. Couple of things I'd probably do different next time when I was pouring, and then I decided to mix. I probably shouldn't have done that, just left it as is. It's fine, just the blue side didn't quite turn out as how I wanted it to. I'd prepped for the timber to float in the resin, that's why I made those little blocks, and I've anchored those down. Maybe didn't cover them with enough tape. We'll see that it may stick and be an issue when I pull it out. Doesn't also specify the drying time. So this stuff is for embedding and casting and doing these resin rivers. And you can pour this stuff to about 3 inches, I think is its max. Specific depths for different resins. The stuff that I use on the surfboard, it's got like a teeny tiny, it won't dry if it's too thick. This stuff's only about 8 mil thick, so it should be fine. Should probably take, I'd say 24 hours, give or take. Anyways, I'll keep coming back and checking on it. Also with the little flamethrower, the heat knocks out all the bubbles that are in the resin. So I'm going to keep coming back and doing that a couple of times over the next couple of hours, just as it starts to dry. Knock all those bubbles out. That was relatively successful. It looks pretty good on that side. There's a weird dip in the middle there. Hang on. There, you can see that? On that blue side. And it does the same on here as well. Not sure why that happened, but I'm going to cut these up now and then start sanding and doing all the finished stuff on it. Hey look, just as we're wrapping up today, I wanted to come on and have a quick little chat with you guys. Anyone who knows us here in the Budget family, we've obviously had some big changes in the last couple of months. With that comes a lot of change to routine. That's why I've had to take this little hiatus from the tubes, as they call it. So what that's meant for us is, being quite regimented. We've got apps to schedule things like feeding and whatnot. It's been a big challenge. Sometimes we've had to just get up and leave social events and been sitting in the middle of the movie theater and had to just get up and go. because when you have these sort of changes, you have to be present, you have to be honest, and you have to just be able to go with the flow. And look, as anyone else knows, when you have a lawn like this, sometimes you just have to get home and feed. You have to stick to that mowing schedule. You have to mow and water when it calls. Anyway, it sounds like she's calling now. It's time for a mow. I'll see you guys later.